The summer sun blazed mercilessly over Rattlesnake Creek, as Rose O'Malley stood frozen at the edge of what should have been her father's ranch, watching strangers load her family's belongings onto wagons. At 22, with her father barely 6 months in his grave, she'd returned from her aunt's in Kansas City to find everything she loved being dismantled piece by piece. "Thomas," she called out, spotting her older brother directing the men. "Thomas, what in heaven's name is happening here?" Thomas O'Malley, 30 years old with their father's strong jaw but none of his integrity, barely spared her a glance. "You're early. Wasn't expecting you until tomorrow." "That doesn't answer my question," Rose said, marching toward him, dust clouding around her boots. Her auburn hair had come loose from its pins during the stagecoach journey, and she pushed it from her face with trembling hands. "Why are our things being taken? Where are the cattle, the horses?" "Sold," he said simply, checking items off a list. "All of it, sold." The single word felt like a physical blow. "You had no right. Father left the circle to both of us." Thomas finally looked at her, irritation flashing in his eyes. "No, Rosie, Father left me as executor and I've done what needed doing. The ranch was drowning in debt." "That's not true," she whispered, bile rising in her throat. "I've seen the ledgers. We were prospering. You've been gone for 3 years. Things change." The revelation hit her like a bucket of ice water. The drinking, the gambling. Her brother's vices that their father had always tried to shield her from. "You gambled it away," she accused. "Everything Father built." Thomas grabbed her arm, fingers digging painfully. "Listen here, I got a fair price from Hamilton Prescott. He's taking over everything, the land, the house, the stock. But I negotiated for you to keep your personal effects. Be grateful for that much." Rose wrenched her arm away. "Grateful? This was my inheritance too, my home. Not anymore. Pack what's yours and be gone by sundown. The new owner arrives tomorrow." Thomas tipped his hat and walked away, leaving Rose standing amid the destruction of her world. She stumbled toward the house, desperate to salvage what she could. Inside, men were wrapping the furniture her mother had lovingly chosen years ago. Family portraits were being taken from walls. Even her father's prized silver pocket watch was gone from the mantel. In her bedroom, Rose found her trunks had been haphazardly packed. Tears streamed down her face as she opened them, finding her clothes thrown in without care. Beneath a shawl, she discovered her mother's locket and a small leather-bound journal, her father's. She clutched them to her chest, the only pieces of her parents she had left. By evening, Rose sat on her trunk at the edge of the property, watching the sun sink behind mountains that had defined her horizon since birth. She had nowhere to go. Her aunt in Kansas City had died 3 months ago, the very reason Rose had finally decided to return home. Her meager savings would afford her a room at the boarding house in town for perhaps a month, but after that, a cloud of dust in the distance announced an approaching rider. Rose wiped her tears, refusing to let Thomas see her broken. But as the rider drew closer, she realized it wasn't her brother. The man who reined his horse to a stop before her was a stranger, tall and broad-shouldered, with sun-darkened skin and eyes the color of summer storm clouds. He dismounted with the fluid grace of someone who'd spent most of his life in the saddle. "Evening, madam," he said, removing his hat to reveal dark hair that curled slightly at the nape of his neck. "You must be Miss O'Malley." Rose stood, smoothing her skirts. "I am, and you are Adam Xavier." "I work for Mr. Prescott." He glanced at her trunk, then back at her face, his expression softening with what looked uncomfortably like pity. "He sent me ahead to prepare for his arrival tomorrow. I wasn't expecting to find anyone here." "Yes, well, I wasn't expecting to be dispossessed of my family home either, yet here we are." Rose heard the bitterness in her voice but couldn't temper it. Adam Xavier shifted uncomfortably. "I'm sorry about that. Do you have somewhere to go for the night?" "That's hardly your concern, Mr. Xavier." "With respect, madam, I can't in good conscience leave a lady alone out here after dark. Rattlesnake Creek isn't what it used to be. The mining camp north of here has brought in all manner of rough characters." Rose glanced at the darkening sky, then back to the man. Despite working for the person who'd bought her inheritance out from under her, there was something reassuringly solid about Adam Xavier. She'd grown up in the West. She knew dangerous men when she saw them. This man's eyes held no malice. "I plan to go to town," she finally said. "The stagecoach doesn't come through again until Tuesday." Adam nodded. "I'd be happy to take you there. My wagon's just down the road." With few options, Rose agreed. As they traveled the familiar path to Rattlesnake Creek, the little town that had sprung up during the silver boom of the 1870s, Rose surreptitiously studied her companion. He handled the wagon with the same easy confidence he'd shown with his horse. His hands were calloused, marking him as a working man rather than one of the dandified Eastern businessmen who occasionally passed through looking to invest in mining or cattle. "How long have you worked for Mr. Prescott?" she asked, breaking the silence. "About 5 years now. I manage his ranch operations." "And what operations would those be before he decided to take mine, that is?" Adam glanced at her, something unreadable in his expression. "Mr. Prescott owns 3 ranches in Colorado Territory. He's been expanding since the railroad came through." "I see." "A land baron, then?" "He's a businessman," Adam corrected gently, "but a fair one from what I've seen." Rose turned away, staring at the moonlit landscape. "Fair men don't buy property from drunkards who have no right to sell." Adam said nothing to this, and they rode the rest of the way to town in silence. He helped her down from the wagon outside the Primrose boarding house, carrying her trunk to the door with effortless strength. "Thank you for the ride, Mr. Xavier," Rose said stiffly. He replaced his hat. "I truly am sorry about your situation, Miss O'Malley. If there's anything I can do to help, unless you can give me back my ranch, I don't think there's much to be done." Rose turned to knock on the boarding house door, then paused. "Though I would appreciate knowing if my father's horses were sold with the rest. Particularly the Palomino mare, Sonny. She was mine since I was 16. A shadow crossed Adam's face. "I'll find out for you." Mrs. Holloway, the boarding house proprietress, opened the door then, exclaiming over Rose's unexpected arrival. By the time Rose had explained her need for lodging and turned back to thank Adam Xavier again, he was already driving away. The next morning, Rose woke early, having barely slept on the lumpy boarding house mattress. Her room was tiny, with faded floral wallpaper and a small window overlooking the dusty main street. She dressed in her simplest day dress. The fine clothes she'd acquired in Kansas City seemed inappropriate now, and went downstairs for breakfast. Mrs. Holloway, a kindly widow who'd known Rose since childhood, clucked sympathetically as she served her eggs and coffee. "Such a shame about the ranch, dear. Your father would be turning in his grave if he knew what Thomas had done." "Yes, I imagine he would." Rose sipped her coffee, finding little appetite for the food. "I need to find work, Mrs. Holloway. Do you know of anything suitable?" The older woman frowned thoughtfully. "The mercantile might need help. Mr. Finch's daughter just got married and moved to Denver, or perhaps the school. They're always short of teachers." Rose nodded, though neither prospect excited her. She'd helped her father run the ranch since her mother died when she was 14. She knew cattle and horses, land management, and animal husbandry. What use were those skills in town? After breakfast, she walked to the mercantile, where Mr. Finch regretfully informed her he'd already hired someone. The school board was equally disappointing. They required teaching credentials she didn't possess. By midday, Rose had tried every respectable establishment in Rattlesnake Creek without success. She was sitting on a bench outside the telegraph office, contemplating her dwindling options, when a familiar wagon pulled up across the street. Adam Xavier stepped down, scanning the street until his gaze landed on her. He crossed over, removing his hat as he approached. "Miss O'Malley," he greeted her, "I've been looking for you." Rose straightened her spine. "Mr. Xavier, what can I do for you?" "I wanted to let you know about your horse. The Palomino mare wasn't sold with the rest of the stock. According to the hands still at the ranch, your brother took her to Silverton 2 weeks ago." Rose's heart sank. Silverton was known for its gambling halls. No doubt Thomas had lost Sonny in a card game. "I see, thank you for telling me." Adam hesitated, then sat beside her, keeping a respectful distance. There's something else. I've been going through the sale documents and there are irregularities. Rose's attention snapped to him. What kind of irregularities? The price, for one. Your brother sold the Circle for far less than it's worth, and the timing is suspicious. Mr. Prescott is an astute businessman, but even he wouldn't normally close a deal of this size without inspecting the property first. Hope flared briefly in Rose's chest before she tamped it down. What are you suggesting? I'm not sure yet, Adam admitted, but I know cattle and land values. The Circle O is worth at least twice what was paid, and then there's this. He withdrew a folded paper from his vest pocket. I found it among the documents. It's a letter from your father to his lawyer, dated just before his death. Rose took the paper with trembling fingers. Her father's familiar handwriting filled the page instructions for his will, explicitly stating that while Thomas would manage the ranch's daily operations, the property itself was to be held in trust for both his children, with neither having the right to sell without the other's consent. Furthermore, Rose was to have sole ownership of the horse herd, which her father had carefully bred over decades. This changes everything, Rose whispered, hope and anger warring within her. Thomas had no legal right to sell anything. No, he didn't, Adam agreed. And Mr. Prescott arrives this afternoon. I think you should be there when I show him this letter. Rose studied him, confusion creasing her brow. Why are you helping me? You work for the man who now owns my ranch. Adam's gaze was steady. I believe in doing what's right, Miss O'Malley. Your brother cheated you, and it appears he may have misrepresented his authority to Mr. Prescott as well. Besides, he added with a slight smile, I grew up on a family ranch in Wyoming. I know what it means to have that kind of legacy. For the first time since discovering her brother's betrayal, Rose felt a glimmer of hope. When does Mr. Prescott arrive? 4 o'clock stage. I thought we might ride out to the ranch afterward, if that suits you. Rose nodded decisively. It does, Mr. Xavier, more than suits me. They agreed to meet at the stage depot at 4, and Adam left to continue preparations at the ranch. Rose returned to the boarding house with renewed purpose, changing into her best dress, a deep green that complemented her auburn hair and brought out the flecks of gold in her hazel eyes. If she was to confront the man who'd bought her birthright, she would do so looking every inch the rancher's daughter she was. At the appointed time, Rose waited at the stage depot, nervously smoothing her skirts. The stagecoach arrived in a cloud of dust and several passengers disembarked, but none matched her expectation of a wealthy ranch owner. Adam appeared at her side, looking smart in a clean shirt and vest. He's not here, he said, frowning. That's unusual. Mr. Prescott is typically punctual to a fault. As they stood deliberating, the stagecoach driver approached. You folks waiting on Hamilton Prescott? When they nodded, he handed Adam a telegram. Got this at the last stop. Asked me to deliver it to whoever was meeting him. Adam unfolded the paper, reading aloud. Delayed in Denver. Business emergency. Proceed with taking possession. Will arrive next week. Prescott. Rose's shoulders slumped. So we wait another week. Adam refolded the telegram, his expression thoughtful. Not necessarily. I know Mr. Prescott well enough to act on his behalf. I can review the evidence and, if I'm convinced there's been wrongdoing, halt the sale proceedings until he arrives. Can you do that? Legally? I have limited power of attorney for Mr. Prescott's business affairs in this region. I rarely use it, but in cases of potential fraud, I'm authorized to protect his interests. Adam offered his arm. Shall we ride out to the ranch? We can examine the documents more thoroughly there. The ride back to the Circle O was both painful and surreal for Rose. This land had been in her family for 2 generations. Her grandfather had claimed it after the Mexican-American War, building the first cabin with his own hands. Her father had expanded it, adding more acreage and building the sturdy ranch house where Rose had been born. Every hill and creek, every stand of trees was as familiar to her as her own reflection. As they approached the main house, Rose was relieved to see it looked much the same, though several wagons stood in the yard and strange men moved about Prescott's employees, she assumed, taking inventory. Adam helped her down, then addressed one of the workers. Johnson, bring the sale documents to the study, all of them. Inside, the house felt different, emptier, with many of the family furnishings gone. Rose ran her fingers along the oak banister her father had carved, fighting back tears. In the study, Adam spread the documents across her father's desk. Rose recognized her brother's hasty signature alongside another she assumed was Prescott's. Adam examined each page carefully, occasionally asking Rose questions about the property's boundaries or livestock numbers. "Just as I suspected," he finally said, tapping a column of figures. "The sale price is barely half the ranch's value, and there's no mention of the trust arrangement your father established." He looked up at Rose. "Your brother defrauded both you and Mr. Prescott. The sale isn't valid." Relief flooded through Rose. "So I can stay, keep the ranch. It's more complicated than that," Adam cautioned. "Money has changed hands. Mr. Prescott has legal rights to consider, but at minimum, you should be entitled to your share, half the property or half its true value." Rose sank into her father's chair, overwhelmed. Even half the ranch's value would be enough to start over somewhere, though the thought of leaving the only home she'd ever known was painful. "What happens now?" "Now," Adam said firmly, "we find your brother. The money he received needs to be accounted for, and he needs to answer for his actions." He hesitated. "You should also know that I dispatched one of our men to Silverton this morning. If your horse is there, we'll find her." Rose looked up at him in surprise. "You did that?" "Before you even knew if I had a legitimate claim," Adam's expression softened. "A good horse is more than property, Miss O'Malley. I could see what she meant to you." For the first time since her return, Rose felt the knot of despair in her chest begin to loosen. This man, this stranger who worked for the very person who'd bought her ranch, was showing her more kindness than her own brother had. "Thank you, Mr. Xavier," she said softly. "Truly?" Adam cleared his throat, suddenly looking somewhat uncomfortable under her grateful gaze. "There's a small cabin near the north pasture that isn't included in the inventory. It would be appropriate for you to stay there while we sort this out, if you'd prefer to be on the property rather than in town." Rose knew the cabin well. Her father had built it for the foreman, though it had stood empty since old Jim Carpenter retired 2 years ago. "I would prefer that, yes." They spent the remainder of the afternoon securing the cabin. Adam sent men to fetch her belongings from the boarding house, and by evening, Rose was settled in the simple but comfortable 2-room structure. Adam had ensured she had provisions and promised to return in the morning to continue investigating her brother's dealings. As she sat on the small porch watching the sun set over her family's land, Rose felt a curious mixture of hope and uncertainty. Her world had been upended, then partially righted in the span of 2 days. And at the center of this whirlwind was Adam Xavier, a man whose integrity shone like a beacon in the darkness her brother had created. She wondered what manner of man his employer might be. Would Hamilton Prescott be as fair-minded as Adam suggested? Or would he fight to keep what he'd purchased, regardless of how it had been obtained? Rose pulled her shawl tighter around her shoulders as the evening cooled, resolving to face whatever came next with the same courage her father had always admired in her. The following morning dawned clear and bright. Rose woke early, made coffee on the small stove, and stepped outside to breathe the crisp mountain air. In the distance, she could see riders moving cattle across the south pasture, work continuing despite the uncertainty of ownership. She was drawing water from the well when Adam rode up, leading a second horse. Rose's heart stopped when she recognized the distinctive golden coat and flaxen mane. "Sonny," she cried, dropping the bucket and running toward them. The Palomino whinnied in recognition, tossing her head as Rose reached her. She buried her face in the mare's neck, inhaling the familiar scent of horse and leather. "How did you find her so quickly?" Adam dismounted, a pleased smile warming his features. "Pure luck." "One of our men recognized her description from a ranch just outside Silverton. The owner was reasonable, seemed to know she'd been won under questionable circumstances, and was happy to sell her back for a fair price." Rose stroked Sonny's velvety nose, happiness bubbling through her. "I can't believe you did this. I'll repay you, of course. Consider it an advance against what you're owed," Adam said. He handed her the reins. I thought you might like to ride with me today. We need to speak with the sheriff about your brother. Rose hesitated. Despite everything, Thomas was still her brother. Is that necessary? I'm afraid so. What he did wasn't just morally wrong, it was illegal. Mr. Prescott will want charges filed. Adam's expression softened. But perhaps we can find a solution that doesn't involve jail time if your brother cooperates. Rose nodded, accepting this as the best she could hope for. Let me change into my riding clothes. An hour later, they rode side by side toward town. Rose felt more herself than she had in days, dressed in her split riding skirt and boots, Sonny moving gracefully beneath her. She glanced at Adam, noting how at ease he looked in the saddle, how his strong hands held the reins with gentle authority. You said you grew up on a ranch in Wyoming. She asked. Adam nodded. The Flying X. My father started it with nothing but 50 head of longhorns and a dream, built it into one of the largest spreads in the territory before he died. What happened to it? A shadow crossed his face. My stepmother happened. My father remarried when I was 16 after my mother died. When he passed 3 years later, everything went to her. She sold it piece by piece to fund her lifestyle in San Francisco. Rose's breath caught at the parallel to her own situation. I'm sorry, that must have been devastating. It was. That ranch was in my blood. His gaze traveled over the rolling hills of the Circle O. Land like this gets into your soul. It's not just property, it's part of who you are. Exactly, Rose said softly, touched by his understanding. That's exactly it. They reached town and tied their horses outside the sheriff's office. Sheriff Buchanan was a grizzled veteran of both the Civil War and frontier law enforcement. He listened gravely as Adam explained the situation, examining the documents they'd brought. Fraud, plain and simple, the sheriff concluded. I'll issue a warrant for Thomas O'Malley. Any idea where he might be? Last I heard, he was headed to Denver, Rose said. But that was before he sold the ranch. He could be anywhere by now. I'll telegraph the authorities in Denver and other nearby towns, Sheriff Buchanan promised. In the meantime, Miss O'Malley, you have my permission to remain on the property until this is sorted out legally. As they left the sheriff's office, Adam suggested lunch at the hotel restaurant. We should discuss next steps, he said, and I imagine you're hungry after our ride. The hotel dining room was nearly empty at this hour, and they secured a quiet table by the window. After ordering, Adam pulled out a small notebook. I've been thinking about your situation, he said. Even if we recover the full amount your brother received, it won't be enough to buy back the entire ranch at its true value. Mr. Prescott paid $30,000, but the Circle O is worth closer to $70,000. Rose's stomach tightened. So even if we win, I lose. Not necessarily. There are options. Adam tapped his pencil against the notebook. One possibility is that you retain half the property, the most valuable half, including the main house and the best grazing land. Mr. Prescott keeps the rest or sells it back to you over time, and you think he'd agree to that. He might. Mr. Prescott values his reputation. Being associated with a fraudulent land deal would damage that. Plus, Adam added with a slight smile, he respects people who stand up for themselves. Your determination to fight for what's yours would impress him. Their food arrived, momentarily halting the conversation. As they ate, Rose considered Adam Xavier more carefully. He spoke of his employer with genuine respect, yet seemed equally committed to seeing justice done for her. It was a puzzling combination. Mr. Xavier, she said finally, may I ask why you're going to such lengths to help me? Surely your first loyalty should be to Mr. Prescott. Adam set down his fork, meeting her gaze directly. My loyalty is to doing what's right. Mr. Prescott hired me because I don't simply follow orders, I use my judgment. In this case, my judgment tells me that you've been wronged, and that making it right is also in Mr. Prescott's best interest. There was something in his steady gaze that made Rose believe him completely. Well, I'm grateful, regardless of your reasons. After lunch, they rode to the bank to inquire about the transaction between Thomas and Prescott. The bank manager, Mr. Simmons, was initially reluctant to share information but relented when Adam presented his power of attorney document. The funds were transferred directly to Mr. O'Malley's account, Simmons confirmed. He withdrew the entire amount, $30,000, the same day, in cash. Rose gasped. All of it, in cash? Yes, Miss O'Malley. He said he was investing in a business opportunity in San Francisco. Adam's expression darkened. He's running, probably halfway to California by now. Outside the bank, Rose tried to process this new information. I can't believe he'd just abandoned everything, our home, our family legacy. For what? Some get-rich-quick scheme in San Francisco. Men do foolish things when they're desperate, Adam said quietly. The question is, what do you want to do now? Rose straightened her shoulders. I want my ranch back, not half of it, all of it. It's not just about the money or the land, it's about what's right. Adam studied her with something like admiration. Then we'll need to make a compelling case to Mr. Prescott when he arrives. In the meantime, I suggest we gather as much evidence as possible about the ranch's true value and your father's intentions. They spent the next several days doing exactly that. Rose went through her father's papers, finding additional documentation of the trust arrangement. Adam brought in an independent assessor from a neighboring town to evaluate the property. They interviewed the ranch hands who'd worked for Rose's father, collecting statements about Thomas's gambling and drinking, his gradual takeover of operations after their father fell ill. Through it all, Rose found herself increasingly drawn to Adam Xavier. He worked tirelessly on her behalf, his intelligence and integrity evident in everything he did. He treated the ranch hands with respect, listened carefully to her opinions, and showed a deep understanding of ranching that matched her own. In the evenings, they often sat on the porch of her cabin, discussing the day's findings. As the shadows lengthened and the mountains turned purple against the sunset, their conversations frequently drifted to more personal topics: childhood memories, books they'd read, dreams for the future. What will you do if you get the ranch back? Adam asked one evening, 5 days after they'd begun their investigation. Rose looked out over the land she loved. Run it properly, the way my father did. Expand the horse breeding operation that was always my particular interest. We have some of the finest stock in Colorado. She turned to him. What about you? Will you always work for Mr. Prescott, or do you have other plans? Something flickered in Adam's eyes. I have ambitions of my own. Someday I'd like to have my own ranch again, build something that can't be taken away. I hope you get that chance, Rose said softly. Their eyes held for a moment longer than necessary, and Rose felt a warmth that had nothing to do with the evening sun. She looked away first, suddenly conscious of how improper their arrangement might appear to others, an unmarried woman spending so much time alone with a man she barely knew. Yet she didn't feel like a stranger anymore. In less than a week, Adam Xavier had become someone she trusted implicitly, someone whose company she genuinely enjoyed. Someone who understood her connection to the land in a way few others could. The sound of approaching hoofbeats broke the moment. They both stood as a rider approached at a fast trot, silhouetted against the setting sun. As he drew closer, Rose recognized Johnson, one of Adam's men. Mr. Xavier, he called, reining his horse to a stop. Sheriff Buchanan sent me to find you. They've caught Thomas O'Malley in Pueblo trying to board a train west. They're bringing him back tomorrow. Rose gripped the porch railing, emotions warring within her, relief that her brother had been found, dread at the confrontation to come, and lingering anger at his betrayal. Adam thanked Johnson, who rode off toward the main house. Then he turned to Rose. Are you all right? I don't know, she admitted. I'm glad he's been found, but he's still my brother, the only family I have left. Adam's hand covered hers on the railing, warm and reassuring. You don't have to face him alone. I'll be with you every step of the way. His touch sent a current through her that had nothing to do with brotherly concern. Rose looked up into his eyes, finding something there that mirrored her own confused feelings. For a breathless moment, she thought he might lean down and kiss her. Instead, he gently squeezed her hand and stepped back. It's getting late. I should let you rest. Tomorrow will be challenging. Rose nodded, both disappointed and relieved. Thank you, Adam, for everything. It was the first time she'd used his given name, and his smile told her he'd noticed. Good night, Rose. Try to sleep. but sleep proved elusive that night. Rose tossed and turned, her mind racing between thoughts of her brother's impending return, worry about Hamilton Prescott's arrival, and increasingly confusing feelings about Adam Xavier. By dawn, she'd given up, dressing and making coffee as the first light painted the eastern sky. She was on her second cup when Adam rode up, looking as though he hadn't slept much either. "Sheriff's deputy just arrived at the main house," he said without preamble. "They've brought Thomas to town. Prescott's coming on today's stage." Rose set down her cup with a shaky hand. "So today is the day everything is decided." "It appears so." Adam dismounted, leading his horse to the water trough. "I thought we might ride in together, speak with your brother before Prescott arrives." An hour later, they sat across from Thomas in Sheriff Buchanan's office. Her brother looked terrible, unshaven, red-eyed, his clothes rumpled from travel. The cockiness she'd seen when he sold the ranch was gone, replaced by a haunted desperation that made him look older than his 30 years. "You've ruined everything," he said to Rose, his voice hoarse. "I had a plan. A real opportunity in San Francisco. You stole my inheritance," Rose replied, fighting to keep her voice steady. "You had no right to sell the ranch. Father left it to both of us in trust." Thomas laughed bitterly. "And what would you have done? Let me run it into the ground?" "I'm not the rancher father was, never could be." The debts were piling up, real debts, Rosie, not just from gambling. Cattle prices are down. That mining company up north has been diverting water from our streams. It was only a matter of time before we lost everything anyway. "So you decided to take the money and run," Adam said, his tone neutral but his eyes hard. Thomas glared at him. "Who are you to judge me? Some hired hand working for the man who bought us out." "I'm someone who respects family legacies," Adam replied evenly. "And the law." Sheriff Buchanan, who had been quietly observing, cleared his throat. "Speaking of the law, Mr. O'Malley, you're facing serious charges. Fraud, for starters, possibly embezzlement depending on how the courts view your trusteeship." Thomas paled. "I still have most of the money." "Almost 25,000. I can give it back." "What happened to the rest?" Rose asked. "Debts, and I lost some in Pueblo trying to double it." Thomas couldn't meet her eyes. Rose felt a wave of pity despite her anger. Her brother had always been their father's disappointment, too impulsive, too easily swayed by get-rich-quick schemes. "That money isn't just yours to give back, Thomas. It belongs to Mr. Prescott, too." "Mr. Prescott will be here this afternoon," Adam added. "I suggest you prepare to explain yourself to him." They left Thomas with the sheriff and walked to the hotel restaurant for lunch, both subdued after the confrontation. Rose picked at her food, appetite gone. "He seems genuinely remorseful," Adam observed. "Thomas has always been good at remorse," Rose replied. "It's avoiding the actions that require remorse that he struggles with." "What do you want to happen to him?" Rose set down her fork. "I don't want him in prison, but I don't trust him with the ranch anymore either." She looked out the window at the dusty street, thinking, maybe this is for the best, a clean break. If we can recover enough money to buy back even part of the ranch, I can manage on my own. Adam studied her thoughtfully. "You're remarkably resilient, Rose O'Malley." She met his gaze. "I come from sturdy stock, Mr. Xavier." His slow smile made her heart flutter. "Indeed you do." The stagecoach was due at 4 o'clock. By 3:30, Rose and Adam waited at the depot, joined by Sheriff Buchanan and a subdued Thomas, who remained in custody but had been allowed to attend the meeting with Prescott. Rose had changed into her best dress again, determined to present herself as a capable businesswoman rather than a victim. Her palms were sweaty, and she resisted the urge to wipe them on her skirts. Beside her, Adam stood tall and composed, though she noticed him checking his pocket watch more frequently as the appointed time approached. The stage arrived precisely on schedule, dust billowing around the wheels as it rolled to a stop. The driver secured the brake and the door swung open. Rose held her breath as a tall, distinguished-looking man in an expensive suit descended. His silver hair and beard were immaculately groomed, and he carried himself with the confidence of someone accustomed to command. "Mr. Prescott." Adam stepped forward, extending his hand. Welcome to Rattlesnake Creek. Hamilton Prescott shook Adam's hand firmly. Xavier, good to see you. His sharp blue eyes moved to Rose, and this must be Miss O'Malley. Yes, sir, Rose said, surprised by the steadiness of her voice. Thank you for agreeing to meet with us. I wasn't given much choice, it seems, Prescott replied dryly. Your situation has apparently consumed my ranch manager's complete attention for the past week. Rose couldn't tell if he was annoyed or amused. I appreciate that time and attention, sir. It's meant a great deal to me. Prescott's gaze shifted to Thomas, who stood uncomfortably under the watchful eye of Sheriff Buchanan. And you must be the brother who sold me a ranch he had no right to sell. Thomas swallowed hard. Mr. Prescott, I can explain. I'm sure you can. Prescott cut him off. Let's continue this discussion somewhere more private, shall we? The hotel, perhaps? They made an unusual procession down the street to the hotel, Prescott and Adam in front, Rose following, with Thomas and the sheriff bringing up the rear. Inside, the hotel manager quickly arranged for them to use a private dining room, clearly impressed by Prescott's commanding presence. Once they were seated around the table, Prescott looked expectantly at Adam. I believe you have a summary of the situation for me. Adam laid out the facts concisely: the fraudulent sale, the trust arrangement that Thomas had violated, the true value of the property versus what had been paid, and the recovery of most of the money. As he spoke, Rose watched Prescott's face for clues to his thinking, but the older man maintained an impassive expression. When Adam finished, Prescott turned to Thomas. Do you dispute any of this, Mr. O'Malley? Thomas shook his head miserably. No, sir, it's all true. I see. Prescott drummed his fingers on the table, then looked at Rose. And what outcome are you hoping for, Miss O'Malley? Rose met his gaze directly. Ideally, sir, I want my family's ranch back, all of it. I understand that may not be possible given the circumstances, but at minimum, I believe I'm entitled to half its true value. And how would you propose to buy back my interest, even at the price I paid? Your brother has only recovered $25,000 of the $30,000. I would work out a payment arrangement, Rose said firmly. The Circle O is profitable when managed properly. I grew up learning the business from my father. I can make it work. Prescott raised an eyebrow, looking intrigued rather than dismissive. A woman running a cattle ranch alone. That's unusual. Perhaps, Rose acknowledged, but not unprecedented, and I'm more than capable. Prescott turned to Adam. What's your assessment, Xavier? You've spent time with Miss O'Malley. Does she have what it takes? Adam's answer came without hesitation. Absolutely. She knows ranching, she knows the land, and she has the determination to succeed. Prescott studied them both for a long moment, his expression thoughtful. Then he turned to Sheriff Buchanan. What charges is Mr. O'Malley facing? Fraud, primarily, the sheriff replied. Possibly embezzlement. It would be up to the territorial court, but he could be looking at several years in prison. Thomas blanched. Rose felt a pang of sympathy despite everything. Prescott nodded slowly. I see. Well, this is certainly a complicated situation. He stood abruptly. I need to consider my options. Xavier, walk with me. The rest of you, wait here. Adam followed Prescott from the room, throwing Rose a reassuring glance as he left. When the door closed, an uncomfortable silence fell over those remaining. I really am sorry, Rosie, Thomas said quietly. I never meant for things to go this far. Rose couldn't bring herself to offer forgiveness yet. You betrayed everything Father stood for, Thomas, everything he built. I know. He stared at his hands. I've never been the son he wanted, not like you were the daughter he adored. That's not fair. He loved us both. Maybe. But he respected you. Me, he just worried about. Thomas looked up, his eyes red-rimmed. Whatever happens, I want you to know I'm glad you're fighting for the ranch. It should be yours. It always should have been. Rose didn't know how to respond to this unexpected capitulation. She was saved from having to try when the door opened and Prescott and Adam returned. Prescott resumed his seat, his expression now decided. I've reached a decision, first regarding the legal matters. He looked at Thomas. I won't press charges, Mr. O'Malley, on the condition that you sign a confession of wrongdoing and relinquish any claim to the Circle O Ranch, now or in the future. Thomas nodded eagerly. Yes, of course, thank you, sir. Don't thank me yet, Prescott said coldly. I'm also requiring that you leave Colorado territory and not return for a period of not less than 5 years, Rose gasped. But it's fair, Thomas interrupted. More than fair. Prescott turned to Rose. As for you, Miss O'Malley, I'm prepared to sell the ranch back to you, the entire property, for $25,000, which I understand is the amount your brother has returned. Rose couldn't believe what she was hearing. The entire ranch for less than you paid. With conditions, Prescott continued. First, you will retain me as a silent partner with a 20% interest in the ranch's profits for a period of 5 years, after which you may buy out my interest at a fair market value. That's very generous, Rose said cautiously, waiting for the catch. Second, Prescott continued, you will need experienced help to run an operation of that size. I insist that Adam Xavier remain at the Circle O as co-manager for at least 1 year to ensure the ranch returns to profitability. Rose glanced at Adam, whose expression revealed nothing. Mr. Xavier works for you. Wouldn't you need him elsewhere? I have other capable managers, Prescott said dismissively. And Xavier has clearly developed a vested interest in the Circle O's success. There was something in the way he said it that made Rose wonder if Prescott had noticed the growing connection between her and Adam. She felt heat rise to her cheeks. Those are my terms, Miss O'Malley, Prescott concluded. Do you accept? Rose looked at Adam, searching his face for any sign of how he felt about this arrangement. His slight nod and the warmth in his eyes gave her the answer she needed. I accept, Mr. Prescott, and thank you. The following days were a whirlwind of activity. Legal documents were drawn up, Thomas's confession was properly notarized, and the ownership of the Circle O was officially transferred to Rose, with Prescott's minority interest carefully defined. Thomas departed on the westbound stage, a mixture of shame and relief on his face as he bid Rose a subdued farewell. Prescott stayed only long enough to see the arrangements finalized before returning to Denver, leaving Adam with detailed instructions for the ranch's management. The morning after Prescott's departure, Rose stood on the porch of the main house, her house again, watching the sunrise paint the distant mountains gold and pink. She heard footsteps behind her and turned to see Adam approaching, 2 cups of coffee in his hands. He offered one to her with a smile. Good morning, Miss O'Malley, or should I say boss, Rose laughed, accepting the coffee. I think we're well past Miss O'Malley, don't you? Especially if we're going to be managing this place together. Rose, then. Adam leaned against the porch rail beside her, looking out at the land. How does it feel to have it back? Like a miracle, she admitted. One I'm not sure I deserve. You deserve it more than anyone. Adam's voice was soft but certain. Your father would be proud. They stood in companionable silence, drinking their coffee as the ranch came to life around them, hands moving toward the stables, smoke rising from the bunkhouse chimney, cattle lowing in the distance. I've been wondering, Rose said finally. Why did Prescott agree to such generous terms? It can't just be the 20% interest. He's giving up a valuable property for far less than it's worth. Adam hesitated, seeming to choose his words carefully. Hamilton Prescott is a shrewd businessman, but he's also a man who values certain things above money: loyalty, integrity, family legacy. Still, it seems unlike a businessman to make such a sentimental decision. Adam turned to face her, his expression suddenly serious. There's something I need to tell you, Rose, something that may change how you feel about everything that's happened. Rose's stomach tightened. What is it? Hamilton Prescott is my uncle, my mother's brother. Rose stared at him, trying to process this revelation. Your uncle, but you said you worked for him. You never mentioned being related. I do work for him. After I lost the Flying X, I had nothing. Uncle Hamilton offered me a position managing one of his ranches. I was too proud to accept charity, but I would take honest work. Adam ran a hand through his hair. I don't advertise our relationship. I wanted to succeed on my own merits, not because of who my family is. Does this mean? Rose struggled to understand the implications. Did you know about the Circle O before? Was this all some kind of plan? No, Adam said firmly. I knew Uncle Hamilton was buying another ranch, but I didn't know the details until I arrived here and found you sitting on your trunk. Everything that happened afterward, discovering the fraud, helping you, that was all genuine. I would have done the same for anyone in your position. Rose wasn't sure whether to feel betrayed or not, and Prescott's decision to let me buy back the ranch, was that your doing? I made the case to him, yes. I told him about your determination, your knowledge of ranching, and the injustice of what had happened, but the decision was his. Adam reached for her hand. Rose, I should have told you sooner. I'm sorry I didn't. I wanted you to see me for who I am, not as Hamilton Prescott's nephew. Rose looked down at their joined hands, then back up at his face, earnest, concerned, waiting for her judgment. Over the past week, she had come to know this man, his integrity, his kindness, his understanding of what the land meant to her. Did it really matter who his family was? I think, she said slowly, that I do see you for who you are, Adam Xavier, and I like what I see very much. The tension left his shoulders. Even knowing I kept this from you, we all have parts of ourselves we keep hidden, at least for a while. Rose squeezed his hand. What matters is that when it counted, you did the right thing. You helped me get my home back. Adam's smile was like the sunrise, gradual, then brilliant. And now we get to run it together, at least for a year. At least, Rose agreed, suddenly very aware of how close they were standing, how warm his hand felt around hers. Adam seemed to realize it too. His gaze dropped to her lips, then back to her eyes, a question in them. Rose answered by stepping closer, tilting her face up to his. Their first kiss was gentle, tentative, a promise rather than a demand. When they broke apart, both were smiling. I think, Adam said softly, that this partnership is going to work out very well. The year that followed proved him right. Together, they rebuilt the Circle O's reputation, expanding the cattle operation and developing Rose's beloved horse breeding program. Adam's experience complemented Rose's intimate knowledge of the land, creating a management team that even Hamilton Prescott admitted was exceptional. Their professional partnership deepened into something much more personal. They courted properly, with chaperone dinners in town and Sunday rides under the watchful eyes of the ranch hands. Rose came to know Adam's strength of character, his quiet humor, his unwavering support of her decisions regarding the ranch. Adam discovered Rose's fierce intelligence, her gentle way with animals, her determination to honor her family's legacy while building something new. By the time the spring roundup came, no one was surprised when Adam asked Rose to marry him, presenting her with a simple gold ring as they sat together on the porch where they had shared their first coffee. Are you sure? Rose asked, even as joy bloomed within her. Running a ranch together is one thing, marriage is another. I've never been more sure of anything, Adam replied. I lost one family ranch because I had no say in its fate. I found another because I helped restore it to its rightful owner, but what I really found, Rose O'Malley, was you. And you're worth more than all the land in Colorado territory. They married in the summer, a simple ceremony in the meadow where Rose's parents were buried. Hamilton Prescott came from Denver for the occasion, giving his blessing to the union with obvious satisfaction. The entire town turned out to celebrate, along with ranchers from miles around, all curious to see the woman who had reclaimed her inheritance and the man who had helped her do it. As the sun set on their wedding day, Rose and Adam stood together on the porch of the home they now shared, looking out over the land they both loved. I was thinking, Adam said, his arm around her waist, that we might rename the ranch. Circle O was your father's vision. Perhaps we should create our own. Rose considered this. What did you have in mind? The double XO, Adam suggested. Xavier and O'Malley together. Rose smiled up at her husband. I like that. A new name for a new beginning, but still honoring what came before. As darkness fell and stars appeared above the mountains, Rose reflected on the journey that had brought her here. Her brother's betrayal had nearly cost her everything, but it had also led her to Adam, a man who understood the value of land and legacy, who had fought to put her inheritance back in her hands, and who now shared that inheritance and his life with her. Some inheritances, she realized, were measured in acres and cattle, Others, like love and partnership, were beyond price. Rose had lost one, only to gain both, and in doing so, had found a future far richer than anything she could have imagined.